Okay, hello everybody. I think that's everybody in. I'm sure everyone could join. I'm just gonna got loads of little pop-ups on my screen, so I couldn't see everyone's lovely faces. Um, I'm gonna kick off now. So hello and welcome to this webinar on InMetriks, closing the gap between insights and action. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Kerry Barton. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Bell Rock Technologies. And for anyone who doesn't know, Bell Rock Technologies consists of two core products, Concerto and MobiS. But Bell Rock Technologies is actually part of Bell Rock Group. Did someone say something? Oh, sorry. I heard a noise, apologies. So Bellrock Tech is part of Bellrock Group, and I'm really pleased to introduce you all to some of my brilliant colleagues from Bellrock today, specifically Carbon Architecture and their product InMetriks. The team I'm about to introduce are true property geeks in the very, very best way. And they don't only help you collect data, but they help you use that data to make powerful decisions. And even better, you can integrate this into Concerto and get even better insight about your property and asset portfolio. It's genuinely quite incredible what you can achieve, and I'm really excited to showcase this to you all today. So before I jump into the introductions, I just need to do the housekeeping. So just like on a plane, no two webinars are the same. So even if you are a regular attendee, the emergency exits might be located in a different place. So do try and listen to this next bit if possible. Attendee cameras and microphones will remain muted throughout the webinar. We're going to have a 30 to 40-minute presentation by my wonderful colleagues and then finish with a 15-minute Q&A. Please submit questions as we go along via the Q&A tab at the top of your screen, and the team will address them at the end of the session. You can also upvote and react to questions you particularly like, and this will make sure that they're prioritised. And if we don't get to your question for some reason, you have my firm commitment that we will address them post-webinar, and we'll send you an email, I'll give you a ring, whatever you'd prefer. And if you have any technical issues, please message on the chat as my colleague Mike is in the background ready to support you. So let's jump into this. Carbon Architecture specialise in carbon consulting and software analytics, helping clients identify energy trends to minimise their environmental impact. Their flagship software, InMetriks, provides a comprehensive suite of tools designed for energy-intensive industries, making it easy to pinpoint and implement cost and carbon-saving strategies. The team combines powerful software with engineering expertise to provide actionable insights into asset performance tailored for sustainable business outcomes. So who are you going to meet today? Well, it's two for the price of one. It's positively a bonfire night bonanza. We have the brilliant Will Todd, the managing director and founder of Carbon Architecture. Will is a chartered engineer with extensive experience in environmental solutions and sustainability. And then we have the equally fabulous John Taylor, the head of analytics and integration at Carbon Architecture. And John brings a strong foundation in operations, business management, business service engineering, and sustainability consulting. But he's also served as chief operating officer in tech firms, which customers just love because he brings practical tech management experience to his role. And that's what we love at Bell Rock, practical technology and practical advice. So on that note, I will pass you over to Will and John.
Hi, Kerry. Thanks so much for that excellent intro. And I will get started by sharing the screen. Just do that and the slideshow. So yeah, as Kerry said, we're really all about energy efficiency. Basically, our business was founded on the premise that buildings are inefficient. There is waste in buildings, particularly across the sort of across public sectors. And we've had a lot of success in the past 15 years in identifying and eliminating that waste, and that's why we developed InMetriks really to create more intelligent tools to help us do that, applying that alongside our consultancy expertise. And we joined the Bell Rock Group, I think, nearly 2 years ago now, and we've been working with Concerto for about a year or so. I think it was kind of obvious quite quickly the benefit of the organisations working together. And I think that what's really exciting for me about being part of the Bell Rock Group is that all that equipment that we're trying to that's consuming energy and we're trying to reduce consumption of, all that plant is being managed by the facilities management teams at Bellrock and is being coordinated through the Concerto software. So everything that we're trying to do, all that detail within Concerto, and it's a really powerful to be bringing that asset data together with our kind of insight and our software. So yeah, really excited to show you kind of the basics of how the integration works and how it helps that workflow. So I'll just click through, and we've kind of already covered who we are, but very much the optimized first strategy and delivering net zero solutions. And we really try to focus on this kind of straight talking solutions focused. So we're really focused on getting in on the ground, doing the actual activities, making those changes. So we'll just kick off, but let's talk just to think about you and what you're doing. The question that we ask our clients is, how are your building services systems performing? In your buildings, you'll have a whole range of equipment, new and old, in various levels of condition. And all it's trying to do ultimately is deliver those compliance levels, make sure it's warm enough, you've got enough fresh air, maybe there's humidity levels in there, make sure it's cool enough in summer. But basically, you've got a whole lot of kit trying to make it comfortable in the spaces that you're in, basically. But is it wasting energy in doing that? And also, is it a risk of failure? Would you know if something is wrong? Would you know if the fresh air levels are lower than needed, if your CO2 levels are high? Would you know if your temperatures are kind of out of range, are too high or too low? Would you know if your hot water flow temperatures drop below 50 degrees or below 6 degrees? What we've developed InMetriks to do is really help you understand that, to help your buildings perform, both from an energy efficiency perspective, but also making sure that you're understanding what the buildings are achieving, what they're designed to, by remotely monitoring and constantly analysing the buildings. And just to give a feel for where the opportunity is for us. So there's a whole range of studies, and I think we all know that there's kind of waste in buildings. There's a couple of studies here, one by UKGBC, around 26% saving just from optimization. So not from installing LED lighting or putting insulation in or heat pumps, but just from actually optimizing existing equipment. Similar study found 30% of energy in UK commercial buildings is wasted. And why is that? The reason for that, so I started out doing building services engineering, and you design for worst case scenarios. So your systems are designed so that you can heat the building when it's -5 outside. You can cool the buildings when it's sort of 30 degrees outside. You've got enough fresh air to cope with full occupancy. And the reality is that they're not always in those states. So in most cases, you're over conditioning the space and you're over engineering that. And then behind that level, you've also got pumps, fans that make mistakes, that overcompensate, issues that happen, a whole manner of things that cause that waste. So what we're trying to do is apply technology to find that waste. And InMetriks is our solution to that inherent waste. So we use a combination of technology and expert consultants to really visualize and realize the savings. And we'll show you a little bit about that later on. But we're seeing cost savings of 10 to 20% when we're applying this to estates. And because of the relatively low cost of implementing this, connecting to buildings, we can actually often see an ROI in less than 12 months. So if you're thinking about your overall energy bill and bringing that spend down, InMetriks is a really powerful solution to do that and to actually make savings very quickly. And aside from that, having better control of your assets in the building leads to longer plant life because your plant isn't fighting as much. It's probably running shorter run times, less cycling. Your service can actually be better. And again, this is where the power of Concerto and Bellrock for facilities management is, that you can utilize this technology to detect those faults first before you get complaints or issues. So you're aware, the software can alert you to out of range settings, high, low temperatures, so fans breaking down, so low fan speeds, and you can automatically be made aware of that. And Michael's just popped up our first poll, and this is just getting a feel for that. If you've also all got very busy lives, we've also got busy day-to-days, and one of the challenges of energy efficiency is prioritizing it, because there's always so many other things to do. But there's a nice question here was to sort of, if you had 12 months on your estate and all you did was focus on energy efficiency, so you're dropping all the reporting, all the kind of management, all the meetings, everything else you're doing, just think about what can we reduce? What do you think that you could save? So just click that and submit, and we'll get some results shortly, hopefully. So quite a good even split. Your responses there. I'll give it a second to see if there's a few more responses coming in. Good, so we're getting a few of interest. Yeah, definitely seeing that more than 15% the fuel on there. I mean, certainly, I think that's as is what we hear generally from our clients, is that there is plenty of opportunity. Right, so we'll move. I'll put done. We'll move on with the slides. So how does InMetriks work? What actually is it? So what we do is we connect to your building system. So typically we'll install a piece of hardware that will connect to your building management system, or we can install sensors and meters. We can install devices to provide to create the data. So either connecting to existing data or creating it. We have a number of ways of doing that. But stage one really is about understanding and assessing. It's understanding what do you have right now, where is energy being consumed. We can use your plant registers in Concerto to actually get an understanding of what's there, but we'll also do site surveys and meet with you to understand what's there and what the opportunity might be. We then connect, so we'll install our hardware to connect to your systems, and maybe also install sub-meters or monitoring devices, all with a goal of understanding and reducing consumption of that key energy consuming equipment. We then visualize that. So once we've connected to all the data, we visualize the data, and this is often the biggest leap, in that you'll have a huge amount of data in meters, in BMS points. You can have thousands of points in your building management system, but no actual way of really visualizing that in a simple way that allows you to quickly highlight where the areas that need most attention. And then we analyze in two ways. One is through our experienced consultancy team, but also through application of a rules engine. So it's intelligently questioning what's happening in the BMS, what's happening with the plants, what's happening in the meters, and looking for unusual activity, looking for something that shouldn't be happening. And we have a whole set of rules that we apply constantly, every 15 to 30 minutes. Those rules are applied, and that will flag to us opportunities. And then those opportunities that are prioritized, we can then take action. So we can work with you as the client to actually really make those changes, and guide you through those changes to actually deliver savings. And that's the critical thing for us. It's all measured based on what we've actually helped you to deliver. So how do we link with Concerto? So it's all about workflow, and that final stage. I'll just go back a slide. That final stage of action to guide, that is often a big sort of jump to make, and there's often a lot of challenge in the way, and sometimes it's kind of people related or workflow related, but making it happen can be difficult. I'm sure we've all sort of experienced that, even sometimes when it's a simple measure. Concerto, the whole is designed to make that workflow from problem to solution to implemented work, right? Concerto works that way. So we try to piggyback onto that. So a very simple workflow. You identify a fault. So we identify, like this little diagram, maybe the fan has gone down, so you're not providing fresh air into a space, which could be pretty critical. And then you need to respond to the fault. So InMetriks identifies the fault, Concerto responds to the fault. Very straightforward. So this workflow, what it might look like, and we would develop a workflow to suit your processes. But the alarms go off in the BMS, or from kind of energy data, consumption data, or IoT devices. Those devices being monitored by InMetriks will set off alarms identified by our rules engine here, and this sort of spark chart, these visuals will identify the rules. We can then convert them either manually or automatically into actions in InMetriks, and we work to decide what would be a sort of critical thing. So, for example, if a fan was to go down in an operating theatre, you'd probably want to action that, someone to look at that immediately. So with this process, you could set that if this fan switches off, if we get a low 0 airflow on this fan, it immediately gets generated as an action, a priority action in Concerto. So someone takes the action to look at it, and we can send those messages or signals to wherever the right place is it wants to go. But basically, that action was generated manually. It's either manually or automatically sent to Concerto as a help desk job, and then is triaged and managed through the help desk in the way that you obviously set up. And then that help desk status, then what we've got is that it then syncs back. So as that status is updated, it syncs back with InMetriks. So that action log that you've got then in InMetriks from an energy management perspective is perfectly in sync with the Concerto system. So you can kind of manage those tasks on both sides. And this is where we're going to nip out. Oh, sorry. And try to play a little video. So can someone give me thumbs up? Carrie, Will, can you just see the video now? You can see the video. Check it's working. Thank you. So this is what sort of metrics look like. So this is a sort of snapshot from a building that we're monitoring at the moment. And you can see here in the sort of rules that we've got AHU supply temperature above set point. So this is sparking. We call it a spark when a rule flags that something unusual has happened. So temperature check, that might mean that the hot water temperature is too high. There'll be more details behind this. But what I mentioned earlier about visualizing is that on a BMS, you'll get a whole range of alarms going off, some useful, some not. And what we're trying to do is show these alarms and show over a period, this is a period of 24 hours, when that alarm has sparked, how long for, and how big an issue it is. And you can modify this visual so that you look at it over a number of days, and you can start to see the repeating patterns of things that are happening occasionally or things that are happening regularly, and actually assess what the cost might be. And actually at the bottom here, we've got this the cost calculation here of the impact of this optimized start issue. So if I just press play, so you'll see again as the sort of cursor's falling around, the sparks have been raised, and what we've decided to do here is turn one of those sparks into a work order. So we've basically seen that spark, seen that issue, and then we've clicked through and said, right, that's an action that we need to take. So we've turned that action into an arc. And I'll just play again. And we've selected the functionality to basically become a Concerto job. So it's automatically, and any Concerto users now should be familiar with this screen or a similar screen to this. So we can see that now we are now in Concerto, and that help desk job, which is to do with this diabetes sensor, AHU supply temperature above set points, those details are all in here. And over here, you can see that there's a link back to SkySpark. So you can see the source of SkySpark, and you can go back to really understand exactly what was happening when within SkySpark. And what we didn't show you was there's charts that will show how things are changing over time to really help you analyze and diagnose that so that the engineer can go back and forth between the software. And I think this is clicks through now. So you'll see now using that, this is what it's gone through. Oh, so these are the charts. Yes, you can see now the spark that was raised and the various charts that show the details of what's happening. And then as you scroll down through here, we can see how, but what we're able to do now is now assign engineers to that job. So again, we can do a manual way, we can assign engineers. And again, that will then sync back with SkySpark. So this is just refreshing now, and you'll see that it's synced back and it's telling that an engineer has been assigned. So we can see that status update in this software as well. So it's just the two softwares operating in sync, delivering savings. And then when it's done, you put work complete. So you can see that at the bottom there. And that's all confirmed. It's job done. Really quick turnaround there. And then when we refresh in SkySpark now, it shows job status is work complete. So we can track again in both systems the opportunities and demonstrate what's been demonstrate what we've saved and how it was delivered. And that's it. That's the short demo. So hopefully, please do sort of put questions in the chat. There's a few more slides to go through. But just to reiterate really kind of why we've integrated with Concerto, and it's about speed of response, resolution of faults and issues. So making sure that when something is highlighted, we get there quickly. It seamlessly drops into your existing workflow. So you've seen a workflow here, but yours might be slightly different. and we can modify the process to really match that workflow. So it increases that speed of fix. And also a key benefit is this first fix percentage. So because your engineers can log into InMetriks and see what's happening in InMetriks, because they can see what the plant's been doing over time, they're more likely to understand what the problem is and to bring the right kit to diagnose remotely, so that they get a higher percentage of first fixes. They're not just coming, turning up blind and scratching their heads and saying what's happened. They've got a much higher level of intelligence than they would have, even from going to the on-site BMS, because it gives you that historic data. So the automatic fault resolution on critical plants, and then asset compliance levels as well. We can start to track asset compliance levels using the software. So there's huge potential from this. We're just sort of scratching the surface, really. And I'm just going to finish just a few examples of what InMetriks looks like in practice. So this is an issue we found on a site where we found the heating was effectively working too hard. So these alerts, the darker purple bars are the sparks. So that's when the software rules engine has said something's happened here that we don't want should have happened. And what's happened is the temperature, in the chart at the bottom, the temperature in some of the spaces has gone higher than it's supposed to. So the room's too warm, basically. And we can look outside and we can look at the temperature here outside, and we can see that it was around sort of 10 to 12 degrees that time. So it was like similar to today, a mild sort of day, in heating mode. But basically what's happening was that the heating system was overshooting the set points. And it might seem small that you're only heating to sort of 20, 22, 23, going up to sort of 25, 26 degrees. It's only a few degrees, but I bet if you had the heating on in your house at 26 degrees right now, you'd notice that in your energy bills. And the reality is you can see 8% degree of saving per degree of reduction. Yeah, and this is another poll. Thank you, Michael, for flagging that up. But in your buildings, do you see that sort of thing happen? Do you see that sort of overheating even on mild and cold days where the heating's working too hard? Be interested to see what you guys are seeing in your own buildings. Still at mine there. Let's test, see if everyone's listening in. Probably I'm sure everyone's enjoying their lunch at the same time, so I can't sort of click through. Good. So do keep phones up. I think it's still open. But yeah, just get a view. It can be common, and sometimes people aren't even aware that those buildings are overheating as well, and that you go in and sometimes they're cooling on in the middle of in the autumn because the heating's just working too hard. So let's just go through again another example we've got here of chiller cycling. So this is something where we were monitoring some equipment, and suddenly the chillers came on, and this was in the middle of May. We were monitoring the kit, and some of the chillers came on. This was because there was a setting in the BMS to turn the chillers on when at a certain date, and they just came on. And because the load actually was really low, they were cycling on and off. So they were coming on, running for a little bit, and going off again because there was a call for cooling. And this cycling is really bad for the chillers generally, but also it's a wasted energy because the reality is that the chillers weren't actually needed because the temperature and spaces were low. But what we found through interrogation of the BMS is that the valves and the handling units were opening by 5 or 6%, just a tiny amount, just to sort of tweak the temperatures. So there's a really big saving there from actually just changing the set points to match the real need of the building, and I have a bit of a sort of dead band in there. So, and then this is a kind of a really big easy one, where by monitoring metering, so by monitoring a water meter. So obviously you have plenty of water meters in your estates. Some will be monitored. You might have an AMR, but often we find that clients don't actually have alerts linked to that AMR, so they're not actually being warned when something happens that's unusual. And this flags at the moment, our system flag this as excess water usage, and you saw a big pattern, big change in consumption. And basically we found that it was that there was a water leak, and it had been running for a month when we first ran our rules. So that would have been happening already. We installed the software, ran the rules, and immediately found £40,000 of savings that could have gone. Who knows how long that could have gone on before they realised. Maybe it could have been another 6 months before someone actually noticed that the water bills were significantly higher than they should have been. Whereas we were able to identify it as soon as we ran the rules and make that saving. And we've just got a case at the end here of where carbon architecture, as I mentioned, we're about energy efficiency and reducing energy consumption, but we do a whole load of services. And example here, we've got a case study of a trust that we've worked with for 8 years, and we've done a whole range of services and helped them on that decarbonisation journey, both help them to raise grant funding, help them to obtain rebates on their CHP at the bottom here, help them with grant funding, but overall help them to reduce their carbon footprint significantly over that period of time. And we're hoping to do the same with more and more clients. So if you want to delve into, if you want to see more, that's my email address on the screen there. And just a bit more about some of our clients. That's me. Thanks, everybody. Well, I've got some new polls coming at the end, have we here? But yeah, should I hand back to Kerry?
Well, it's time for any questions. So if anyone posts, if everyone posts their questions in the Q&A, the guys will pop in and have a look and start answering them for you.
Okay, great. So thanks, John. That was great. I'll take the first question from an anonymous person. But what type of buildings can InMetriks be used for? So it's quite a broad spectrum of buildings that we use the system with, but I guess they tend to fall into two different types of categories that we typically work with. We often work with portfolios of more simple buildings where the data available is less complex, things like chains of coffee shops, which you guys obviously aren't. And typically what we're doing is operating based on energy meters that serve those buildings, and then sometimes some IoT devices that are deployed into those buildings that tell us the conditions and we can use to turn things on and off. And then at the other end of the spectrum is smaller numbers of more complex buildings. And typically they will be things like hospitals or manufacturing plants, where you've got a much more complex building with a higher energy consumption and a BMS system controlling it. So really across a broad spectrum, and the software is agnostic to the building systems that you've already got. So it's not tied to any particular supplier of building control system or hardware.
Cool. Do you want to keep going, Will, with the questions?
Yeah, I'm just looking for. I'm not seeing any more. A lot of them are coming in the chat, aren't they? Sorry. Yeah.
The next one was, how do you ensure IT security when connecting remotely to NHS plants? Is Will frozen?
No, I'm not frozen. It's just they're not popping up on my Q&A, most bizarrely. So
you have to scroll down. Maybe it's the bottom.
I don't know. Read that out, please. I can answer the question though. How do we ensure security
IT security when connecting remotely to NHS plants?
Yeah, understood. So we have a number of methods of being secure. So the software is hosted on AWS web servers, and as a business we're certified. Bellrock are, we're under Bellrock's IT security certification, so we're externally tested and penetration tested and stuff, and we're also listed on a number of public sector frameworks who check those credentials. But then in terms of how we work with customers, we need to make a secure connection to your building control system, and there are a number of different ways of doing that, and we tend to deal with that on a customer by customer basis, either using VPNs or secure IP to IP connections to customers. But we work with NHS and other public sector IT teams and IT security teams, and we've not had a case where we've not been able to satisfy those requirements so far.
Good, thanks, Will. And the next question was, where do your customers tend to see the biggest savings from InMetriks?
You want to take that one, John?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And it's ultimately it's where the biggest equipment is. So I think that when you look at the biggest savings, you'll find that you've got fans and pumps, chillers that are running for long hours, and they've really got pretty high ratings. So, you're talking about, 10, 20 kilowatt machines that are just running constantly, using energy for very long periods. And often it's just about tweaking those down sometimes, not necessarily switching it off, but just about running them at a lower level, while still delivering the compliance levels. I think often we find that spaces are that they've been set up to avoid complaints. They've been set up to say, let's have zero risk of anybody saying it's too hot or too cold. And as a result, you end up really trying to close control the space and end up heating and cooling. And I think in those sort of setups where the focus has been on totally on kind of comfort and not necessarily any view on energy, the result of that is that you end up with the spaces warm at 4 in the morning instead of it being at sort of 7 or 8 when people start to occupy. And we can start to see that data in the software. So shoulder periods as well. You get a lot of waste when things are trying to run. So it's all about targeting basically the biggest planned items is where the biggest savings are. But again, actually, it can be the sum of a number of smaller savings as well.
Great, thanks. We've got another question from Peter Taylor. Can the system connect to any BMS system? As they are normally closed protocol, for example, can we connect to Schneider BMS? So the answer is yes, pretty much we can connect to any BMS system. It's just the method by which we connect varies depending on what the system is. So I'm going to answer another question simultaneously with yours. So depending on how your BMS system is hosted, like whether it sits on a PC at site or whether it's on a server or whether it's remote, depends whether we would deploy actually any hardware or whether it would just be a software connection solution. And again, depending on the BMS and how it's configured, often we can use open protocol methods of communication, such as BACnet, which you can sometimes use on things like Schneider systems if that's enabled, for example. Or Haystack, which is another open protocol. And if we can't use any of those open protocol comms, then we have a series of drivers that we can use, which are vendor specific drivers basically to connect up to your BMS system.
Great.
Yeah.
I think another one just jumped in, guys, on the chat. Are you currently working with any local authorities specifically? There's obviously a lot of data being collected, and I'm curious how customers manage this with limited resources. It's a good question. Thanks, Deborah. Yeah,
it's a really good question. So yeah, we are working with a number of local authorities, direct customers of ours, and also ones that we've originated as being part of the Bellrock group. There are also Concerto customers as well, and so there is a lot of data, and I think for every customer, the way the service is delivered is slightly different, to meet the needs of that customer and the way the sorts of resources they have and the objectives that they've got to meet.
What I'd say, Deborah, as well, just to add to that, is if you are interested, we could maybe pull together a list of local authorities that are local to you or ones that are using it, so you can speak to your peers about how they managed internally, and how they found it, how resource intensive it was from their point of view, because the best thing to do is to speak to the local authorities that we're working with. So yeah, if you want, I can reach out post this and put you in contact with people using the system.
Thanks, Kate. And so in terms of the volume of data, that's a massive challenge, and we need that data to understand our buildings, and both from meters, sub-meters across the states. But then once you get into BMS data, you're talking of, we could have a BMS that has 5,000 points of data that we're recording every 15 minutes. So multiply that up, the number of points that we're getting, you're very quickly running into millions of points of data, piece of data, and that's why InMetriks is built on a database that enables that visualization. So nobody can look at every single bit of data all the time. What you need is software that guides you where to look. So, and that's what the rules engine does. Is it says, of all the data you've got, we've analyzed 1 million points of data, bits of data, and here are the 10 things that actually are most unusual today. So have a look at those, or here's the of the points we're constantly recording, this point seems to be having an issue every couple of days or every few hours. It seems to constantly be flagging an issue or something unusual is happening, and that's what we're trying to see in InMetriks. So it's taking all that data, analyzing it, and pointing you to where it's most of interest. Because most of the time, your building should just keep running as expected. And I think we just missed one above from Plastic here. Do you work with in-house FM teams to obtain the data needed? And that very much depends on the client. Basically, we tend to connect with people working in these data teams, with energy managers, sustainability people. We tend to work directly with them, and then we can then liaise with their FM teams. They kind of introduce us to it. Critically, I think that the facilities management team role is critical to actually delivering the benefit and making sure the plant continues to run effectively. So for us, it's always really valuable to be engaging with them from early on in the process. And if they've got data, we can get it from them, but also there's plenty of other sources of data as well with getting that data.
Okay, guys, don't stop yet, because Mark has just pointed out that when I refreshed the Q&A, some more questions popped up. So I'll read some more out for you.
How do I refresh the Q&A? How do we do that?
I've actually worked this out now. So having a previous fail, right? So we had a question which is, which NHS trusts do you work with? We work with quite a few as a wider business. We have quite a few that we work with using this technology, but in our sort of wider energy and carbon services point of view, we work with a bunch of London trusts like King's, Croydon, Kingston, the Whittington, the Royal Free. There's a bunch, Newcastle. I'm just listing off the top of my head. So we work with quite a lot of NHS trusts, maybe 20 or 25 of them are active clients at the moment. Can we give you a broad idea of costs? Yeah, so typically the pricing methodology tends to be based on the complexity of the buildings and the size of the buildings and the number of assets that are being monitored. So this is really a service with software as part of it that we're selling here. It's not just pure software as a service, and so it does depend on your particular portfolio. So this is a question from Phil Jordan. So I think, Phil, if you were able to give us some more detail and able to have a conversation with us, we could very quickly come up with a price for you. But it's difficult for me just to say it out loud.
And I think that the solution that we have is very flexible, and what we really focus on is that 12 months return on investment. So what can we deliver quickly? What are the biggest priorities to deliver savings quickly? And we don't need to monitor every building, every item in the buildings. We can focus on priority plants, priority areas, priority meters as well, and we can flex the service, the amount of time that we spend in coordination with yourselves as well. We can kind of we want to sort of coach you so you're using it as well. It's not just us as a third party. So really, it's let's understand what the opportunity is, what the budget is, and we'll find a solution that delivers savings. And what we often find is from that first kind of that first stage of work, clients then want to kind of keep working with us and do more and more because they start to see the benefits realized.
So the next question is, what sets us apart from other providers? I would say that we're not just selling this software. What we're selling is our expertise alongside this software, and I think that's what's needed to get the best out of this type of technology. And many of our competitors are purely software houses, and what we're actually doing is helping you deliver a result.
Yeah, and I think as it says on the screen, those straight talking solutions focused. That's I think it's less reports and more doing, and should demonstrate that we've done it.
Guys, I can't see any more questions popping in now. So what we'll do is, firstly, thank you, John and Will, for that. It was really interesting, and hopefully everyone got some benefit from it. I would say you can reach out to, you should have all our contact details, but if you want to reach out to myself, John or Will, we can answer any more questions that you have, or if you want to see it in action, and anyone like Deborah who's requested information specifically, I'll make sure that gets done for you. But yeah, just reach out and you'll all be sent a copy of a recording of the webinar, so you can go back and listen to bits as well, which will be great. So thank you all for your time. There was so many of you and you all stayed to the very end, which is always a great sign. And thank you, John and Will, for coming today this lunchtime and meeting some of our great customers. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks everybody for the time you've given us.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Absolute pleasure.